to Real Cinema Club. I'm James Ruzika.
I'm a little reluctant to give my name because you're wearing something funny, but my name's Andres Lorente, yeah.
Do you like my hat? What do you think?
Don't know if I want to be associated with you at this particular moment. You look a little bit like, do you remember the film Barbie?
Yes, that is just what you're exactly right. That is the look that I was going for.
You look a little bit like Ken just stole Barbie's hat, and you're wearing Barbie's hat.
For those of you not watching the video version of the podcast, spoiler: there is no video version. I am wearing this magnificent pink fluffy Stetson, which I only ever dig out for special occasions: Christmas, birthdays, bar mitzvahs, christenings.
And popcorn counters.
I slightly miss the days when people would wear a hat all the time. It's like any excuse to wear a hat. My cousin Chad, when I was 19, I think, he grew up in Calgary. Lovely guy, television producer now. He came over to stay with us for a month. In the UK, and he was wearing, when he arrived, and wore for the entire trip, this huge Stetson, this big kind of tan-coloured Stetson. And I was introducing him to all my friends. They're all kind of saying, "Oh, is he from Texas? Why?" Because I think, Calgary, my understanding is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Calgary is kind of like Canada's Texas. There's oil there, isn't there, I think?
Yep.
And so he was really, he's a lovely looking guy, and he was enjoying getting all the attention of people, not only checking out him, but checking out his huge Texan-looking Stetson. I kind of miss the days when everybody will wear a hat. I think they should come back.
I love the films of the 40s and the 50s where everyone has a pork pie hat. All the men do anyway. And the women have some lovely hats in that era too, with these little partial veils to cover their eyes if they need to. Yeah, I agree. I mean, now it's all baseball caps here, Everyone's wearing baseball hats all the time. So it's much less variety, I guess. There were interesting hat fashions that we've seen on film through the years.
It's only when I did continuity on a student film when we were at film school together, and kind of that made me realize the true value of wearing a hat. If you are a film actor, if you are appearing on set, the joy of wearing a hat means that you can avoid haircut continuity errors. It's very easy to get the hat the same between days and between shots. Whereas if you have no hat on, we have to make sure that your hair looks the same in every shot, that it's always blown the same way, that you need to get your hair trimmed every morning on set so that it looks the same as the previous day. Hats cut all that out, and I can see exactly why wearing a hat on set is such a gift.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the many reasons why hats are a big thing in film.
Yeah.
You see hats all the time in films.
You do. I was just going to say, does it solve those problems, though? Because I had an experience where it caused problems. Hats caused problems. Yeah. A short film I was making, my actor kept wearing the wrong hat. So yes, he had a hat. He had a mohawk, so we did want to cover the hair. But he had a Boston Red Sox, a baseball hat on, and then he showed up without. He showed up with a different hat. So we did two different things because we took black tape and just covered the change in the insignia on the hat. And then we also had him put his hand over the front of the hat to cover it at one point because we had two different angles, I think it was. So we had to change it when he was wearing the hat backwards. We just put black tape over the wrong insignia. And then later on, he had to cover it. He was wearing it front forward, and he had to hold his hand awkwardly on his hat, expressing grief or something like that in order to make sure that he still had a hat on, but it wasn't the right hat. So, oof. And it was an actor error. Short film, no budget, actor error. So it actually caused a problem.
Your wider experience once again trumps mine. Absolutely. I was trying to make a list of greatest hats in film.
Yeah,
we're having just watched Barry Lyndon and Napoleon. Between them, those films must contain 10,000 hats or more.
Yeah,
incredible volume of hats on screen.
Yeah.
But I think if you ask anybody, name a famous hat from a film, I think everybody says the same one. Which one do you think they say?
I was going to say Forrest Gump. because he wears a baseball cap because that's such a big film. But if I go to a different document, I think I can get it.
You can read my notes, which is I reckon it's Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah,
is the most famous hat in cinema
for sure. Well, that's like a combo, isn't it? Hat and whip, I suppose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a clever little bit of iconography, isn't it? If you can think of a thing which represents your character. Even a little bit like, I mean, the other alternative most famous hat is Charlie Chaplin, isn't it?
Yeah,
where you have a hat and a stick.
Yep.
And then there you go. You can just show those two things, and most people will know who that is.
Yeah, it's to a certain extent, it's kind of product placement in a way. And I was just talking about the Forrest Gump thing, and I realized you can actually buy it's Bubba Gump. It's the shrimp hat that he wore, and you can still buy those hats. So I mean, you're getting residuals because you can still buy the hat from a certain film. I don't know how many hats Indiana Jones sold or Charlie Chaplin. Those were the popular hats at the time. I guess it's a bowler cap, I suppose, is what you would call it.
Yeah. Or I mean, when I never really liked Charlie Chaplin that much. I don't know whether he was just a little bit too stagey or just too remote. I never quite laughed at Charlie Chaplin the way that I laughed at one of his contemporaries, who Harold Lloyd was syndicated heavily on like UK television when I was a boy. So I would commonly come home from school, turn on the TV, and Harold Lloyd would be on. I'm sure those Harold Lloyd shows were like incredibly cheap for the BBC to syndicate. Yeah. Back in like the early 80s. But Harold Lloyd, instead of having the bowler hat and the stick, he had a straw boater and some glasses. But he was clearly going for that same kind of easily recognizable hat shtick. That was the thing, wasn't it, in the 20s and 30s? You needed to have some kind of recognizable shtick, and it was going to be a hat.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it's changed that much. Well, it sort of morphed a little bit. I think for me, I think of the classic black hat, white hat, which we even saw a little bit in Once Upon a Time in the West recently. Always the black hats were the bad guys and the white hats were the good guys. And it was just this, it's this sort of stereotyping or this telegraphing what kind of character you were watching.
But do you think the idea that the characters had gone into the hat shop and they'd specifically made their own moral choices about, I need to buy a black hat, or I feel proud of myself, I'm going to buy a white hat.
I'm a bad guy, give me the black. I don't know. Yeah, but it definitely was a trend throughout all those. Those were mostly probably 1940s and 1950s in particular. The classic westerns and their hats.
To be frank, if you were a cowboy riding on a horse through the Wild West, a white hat is an extremely impractical garment.
Very impractical.
It's not going to be white for 5 minutes by the time you get out the shop.
But you're wearing white. You're passing through heaven. You're not passing through the dusty west.
Even the dust recognizes the good guys and stays off them.
Yeah. Well, the blood stains would be awful, right?
We have there is a 21st century equivalent of those westerns with the black hats and the white hats, which is the Marvel films, I think.
Okay.
That headgear is a big thing for those guys as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
At least insofar as if it's not a hat, it's a helmet or whatever, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like it's Iron Man's helmet or it's Captain America's helmet with a capital A on his forehead to remind you that he is Captain America. I'm struggling to think of other Marvel characters with hats, but there must be one. Galactus. Did you used to read those Marvel comics? You weren't a big comics guy, I seem to remember from our previous conversation.
I've never been a big comics guy, so I'm going to trust you and your wealth of knowledge on Galactus and anything Marvel.
I think Marvel are kind of setting up Galactus to be the next big bad.
Oh, really?
Goodness knows what's going to happen to Marvel films after The Marvels has recently lost an incredible amount of money at the box office. So I think Marvel is going to go back to the drawing board if they know what's good for them. But I think they are setting up Galactus to be their next big bad. And the one thing that most distinguishes Galactus, apart from him being like the size of a galaxy or something like that, he has this enormous hat, absolutely massive hat with two kind of purple horns on it. They know how to do hats in Marvel.
Yeah.
If anything's going to make hats come back, it's going to be the sheer commercial application of Marvel shoving hats down our throats. Kubrick was a big one for hats, though.
Yeah.
I mean, not just
everywhere.
Not just Barry Lyndon, but like all of those Kubrick films are big on hats.
You've got a Clockwork Orange bowler cap, which is sort of reminiscent of Chaplin again.
Like that Born to Kill helmet from Full Metal Jacket, that's the one image they put on the poster, isn't it?
That's right.
They are so proud of the hat in that film that represents the whole film. Even like Eyes Wide Shut. So having watched all those tricorn hats in Barry Lyndon, there must have been some left over at Kubrick's house because then they're wearing them again for Eyes Wide Shut. There's a thing for tricorn hats in Kubrick. I've never really quite noticed that until now. That was a thing for him.
That's 25. Those films are about 25 years apart, aren't they?
Those hats were made to last.
Yeah.
And even like 2001, the spacesuits that they wear have these really stylish, beautifully designed helmets. It's all with the headgear, isn't it? Absolutely.
I'll tell you what I think one of the most ridiculous hats I've ever saw was on screen.
What do you mean beside my hat that I'm now wearing still?
Well, no, but you're not on screen. You're capturing this on film. Uh-oh, someone just took a picture of you. Garden State, which is a Zack Braff film, and he had Natalie Portman play I think she had epilepsy.
Okay.
So she had to wear this sort of this soft kind of helmet to protect her in case she fell. But that whole film, I felt like it was just an excuse for Zack Braff to be able to kiss Natalie Portman on camera. Truly ridiculous film. I did not like it at all. And I thought, boy, first of all, you're putting Natalie Portman, who's so lovely, putting her in this like old school American football helmet. And it's obvious that you just want to have a crush on her or have a relationship with her, and that's why you're making the film. So that was one of the most ridiculous things done with a hat in film history, I think.
And yet, incredibly, it did work, and Natalie Portman did sign on for the picture.
Exactly. But there's a hat film that when we started talking about hats, it came to me that it's really kind of a rubbish film. It's called Autumn in New York with Richard Gere and Winona Ryder.
Right, okay.
Around 2000. And
that sounds like the most 2000 film imaginable somehow, yes.
It's the film like I kind of fell back in love with Winona Ryder in this film, and she plays a hat maker. It's very ridiculous. She makes these crazy little hats, very artistic. They're meant to sort of be worn for special occasions, like your hat right now. And Richard Gere's this much older restaurateur, and they fall in love. But she's actually a hat maker in New York City, and it sounds like the pitch for this film was that someone wrote the word whimsical on a baseball bat and then beat you around the head with it. This is whimsical, all in caps. Yes, carry on. Yeah, it is quite funny. I mean, it's the kind of schmaltzy film that I just absolutely love. It's romantic and some great leads, honestly, even if their relationship might not be age appropriate. But I was also reminded because around that same time, maybe a little earlier, I had a friend who was making these sort of customized brassieres.
Right.
And she was trying to sell them high end. So she would take a
breast hats, as we like to call them. Yes, carry on. Yes.
That's kind of what they are, aren't they? Yeah, they're breast hats. So she was making these breast hats, but she would glue or sew in various emeralds and jewels. They became these fantastic things. And she had this one goal in life, was to make a brassiere for Madonna.
Oh.
And she ended up selling Madonna a brassiere. Madonna found out about it. This is when she was in New York. Found out about her. They sat down. I don't know if they did like measurements or how you work that out, but she actually ended up making one of her brassieres for Madonna. So it's as ridiculous as that film was to me, the Autumn in New York. I had a real life connection to it. It was possible for someone to make this sort of boutique and whimsical clothing item and sell it to famous people. So there's a dose of reality in there.
That is a very impressive claim to fame. I'm not going to beat that one for a long time.
No, what a life goal, and how wonderful to achieve it.
Speaking of Madonna, that reminds me of the other big hat film that always occurs to me when we talk about hats is Elizabeth. Have you seen that? Which is like 1998, something like that. Film about the early life of Elizabeth I, UK monarch. Did you ever see that?
I think I did. The actress is not Kate Blanchett.
It is Kate Blanchett.
It is Kate Blanchett.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Only because that's one of those films where the costume design is doing 60 or 70% of the heavy lifting in the whole film. Yeah. It's all about the costumes, and they make it fairly explicit that you're basically controlling her court through the use of elaborate headgear. Yeah. She just wears these kind of outfits and these hats, especially, which are just so befuddling and fascinating that it just kind of hypnotizes people. It's amazing. You really can control the population of the United Kingdom through your choice of hat. That's that is politics for you. I've got one other hat film on my list, which is one of my personal favourites. And we're going back to the debate about are you a comic guy or not. I figured out you're not a comic guy. Did you ever see it's the 2012 version of Judge Dredd called Dredd, which is I think it is a bit of an unsung modern classic. It is a British, relatively low budget science fiction film based on the character of Judge Dredd, who was like super big UK comics character in the kind of the early 80s, the late 70s, the early 80s. Judge Dredd was this future science fiction policeman in a future science fiction Los Angeles, but the comic was all about Thatcher's Britain. It was kind of a lampoon of the increasing kind of right-wing fascism and authoritarianism that we in the UK were seeing with Thatcherism. It was a comic ostensibly set abroad, but written by British writers about the British societal situation. But the gimmick for Dredd was that he never took his helmet off in the comic, and then the character was turned into a film with Sylvester Stallone in like the late 90s, and because it was Sylvester Stallone, he took his helmet off within minutes of arriving on screen, which utterly ruined the mystique of the character. So for the 2012 version, they got it right again. Dredd never takes his helmet off, and it's such an iconic helmet. And the notion of him being a character whose face we never see allows him to be this kind of universal everyman. So it allows you to say things that you probably wouldn't be able to see if you could look into the eyes of the character. It's beautifully designed helmet, beautifully designed film, a proper science fiction classic. It's all about the hats. The hats. See, hats is where it's at.
Well, you can't spell hat without where it's at.
Actually, you can, because where it's at does have an H in it. Okay, so you can misspell hat by taking letters from where it's hat, where it's at.
But you need at least to spell hat. Last I knew.
So what I'm taking away from this is you don't think I should wear the hat?
Well, I worry about the person sitting behind you in the cinema because they're not going to be able to see the film. But this film might not be worth watching anyway. So you're probably making the film better. Just as hats make films better, you're making this film better by wearing.
I'm deliberately getting revenge on the boy who spent all of Napoleon texting. I'm going to try to sit in front of him next time I see him.
Let's go find him.